Welcome to the February 6th, 2024 meeting of the Carrboro Town Council. Welcome. Right on time. We'll start our meeting out as we always do with a poetry reading. And happy Black History Month. And so we have a really special guest poet here, Tyler Kamya. Please come up. All right. Woo! Kamya.
I've named my poem Raindropped. The sky weeps rivers of blue, her own wistful liquid hue, and I comfort her beneath the rain to diminish her endless pain as I wait till she's due.
Thank you so much, Tyler. We hope that you will join us again sometime with another poem. Thank you. Announcement of upcoming meetings. Wendy Welsh, our interim town clerk.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. We have a few upcoming meetings. Starting on Thursday, February 8th, the Stormwater Advisory Commission will meet at 8 p.m. at Town Hall in room 100. On Monday, February 12th, the Recreation and Parks Commission will meet at 7 p.m. at the Carrboro Century Center. And next week, Tuesday, February 13th, we have the Town Council work session.
Councilmember Haven O'Donnell.
Yeah, there's a climate action team meeting on the 8th, and it's virtual.
Thank you. Any other meetings? Nope. So we have moved on to public comment. I have a list of people that want to speak this evening. I see quite a few for the Wasamba item, and I will call you up at the time of that item. We also have 5 or 6 people for the renaming of Carr Street, and so we will call you up now. The first person I have is Lucy Gorham. Hello. So you will have 3 minutes, which is on the large screen there. And please address your comments to the council.
Great.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Fushi, the council, and also staff. My name is Lucy Gorham. I'm a Carrboro resident living at 100 Dove Street. And tonight I'm speaking for myself, for Emily Condon, another Carrboro resident, Buffy Weber of Chapel Hill, in support of the November 28th, 2023 Town Council resolution to rename East and West Carr Street for Braxton Fushi. The decision removes the name of Julian Carr, a man who made no secret of his racism and contempt for the Black residents of our town, and instead chooses to honor Braxton Fushi, a local civil rights activist who has dedicated his life to improving the town of Carrboro. Mr. Fushi's many virtues were articulated when the unanimous vote was taken to change the street name in November. African Americans have a long tradition of positive contributions to our community without the same recognition given white families. It is past time for all of us, but particularly children growing up in our town, to know the accolades and achievements of Black residents and to feel pride in their accomplishments. We endorse and appreciate the efforts of town staff to identify a path forward in changing the name to Braxton Fushi Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gorham. Next, we have Dick Forbes. Come on up, Mr. Forbes.
Thank you, Mayor, council members, and Carrboro staff. We certainly appreciate the time for us, several of us, to come forward and speak on this renaming. Not because we think that there's anything wrong with recognizing and honoring Braxton Fouché, because that's long overdue and is a wonderful thing for Carrboro to do. We are trying to come to grips with the impact on all of the residents of Carr Street who are just finding out about this proposal. Several of us have gone back to the November 29th board meeting and watched that discussion. Some of the members that are here who live on Carr Street have received a letter from the town describing the action and with all of the background information. My wife and I and several others have not received anything, have not received any notice that Carr Street might be renamed. If this item stays on the consent agenda, no one of the many residents of Carr Street will have any opportunity to understand or input into the decision to rename our street. We've only had 24 hours to think about this process, and most of the time we were wondering, wow, where did this come from, and what do we have to do? But everyone has a list of things that, already we know that we have to do. Records have to be changed. Driver's licenses have to be renewed. Passports have to be reissued. Recorded house deeds have to be changed. Financial statements, magazine subscriptions, medical records, insurance policies, credit cards, tax records of all kinds. And in addition to renaming of Carr Street, it's also renumbered. So the physical number sign that you have on your house, sometimes it's maybe just a Home Depot number. Sometimes it's a very, very artistic representation of the house that it sits on. The issue of changing this is not time critical. We ask for the item to be removed from the consent agenda and the opportunity for residents of Carr Street to understand and speak to the issue.
Thank you, Ms. Forbes. And you are also representing Cheryl Forbes. The next person to speak. Oh, you want to speak too? They eked your name in here. I'm sorry. I thought he was, okay. Cheryl Forbes. You have 3 minutes as well, Ms. Forbes, Mrs. Forbes.
Here? Here. Here. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. We appreciate it. My name is Cheryl Forbes. I've lived in Carrboro as a permanent resident on Carr Street for 20 years. Having served on a town commission for 9 years in Carrboro, I have always appreciated the multi-step process involving community that Carrboro has projected. The opportunity to present ideas and plans and study those plans, the receiving of public commentary, especially by those who are closely impacted by the plans under consideration, and the final making of thoughtful decisions is wonderful. Imagine our surprise when my husband and Dick and I learned through a neighbor who received a letter only yesterday, a letter dated January 31st, that our street name and house and number were to be changed in a month. Further, imagine my surprise when I reviewed the video of the town meeting on November 29th, more than 2 months ago, when the name change was suggested and quickly voted on with no resident from Carr Street present. The wisdom of Mayor Damon Seals to be careful with the impact on residents of the street was ignored. The question of Trish McGuire, who asked, "What if the residents say no?" was ignored. I want to point out that my husband and I and other neighbors have yet to receive this letter with this item for this evening. This is not a process of decision-making that I am familiar with in Carrboro. In fact, it feels secretive and frankly dismissive of Carr Street residents. We appreciate the responses that we've received from Misters Noel and Posada, but you are naive when you think that the changing of masses of legal papers and documents will be an easy process for any of us, not to mention the time and money these changes will incur. All of us love Braxton and the work he has done on behalf of justice and community. And we all detest the values and practices that Julian Carr stood for. When the street name was brought up on November 29th, I was struck by the number of people who stood to say they wanted to, and this is my paraphrase, stick it to Mr. Carr. I want to inform you that Julian Carr is dead, but your decision is actually going to stick it to the dozens of residents who live on the street and the changes that will have to be made. Many of us are permanent residents, and many of us are here tonight as well. And my question is, do you see us? Do you hear us? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Forbes. Next, I have Cheryl Parker.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the Town Council. My name is Charlene Parker. I live at 113 West Carr Street and have basically my whole life. Thank you for letting me speak. My grandmother, my mother, and I all grew up on Carr Street. My great-grandfather farmed, and we had 3 family homes that soon grew to 5. When my mother was young, the only other family on the street, owners of the rest of the land, were the Rigsbys, a white family. Not all Rigsbys like black people, but the families coexisted side by side, and over time, friendships between my family, the Coles, Hogans, and Vickers, and the Rigsbys grew. What does Carr mean to me? Not just my hoopty that gets me from A to B every day, but also it means races living side by side as neighbors and friends over many, many decades and still today. On the street named to honor Julian Carr, there's no sign of him, except for the sign. There's no ghost of slavery, no specter of white supremacy. Any homage to that thinking has not been allowed to survive or flourish on our street. The residents of the street have given new meaning to the name Carr. It's a name, really just a word. It has no power. It can't divide us. It can't ruin what our town continues to build on. I, too, like Dick and the rest of my neighbors, I'm 100% behind honoring Braxton Fashee. But let us keep Carr. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Next, I have Sonia Rovner. I'm sorry. Come on up.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for letting me speak. The way the board renamed Carr Street was rushed through in a secretive process. The agenda for November 29th, 2023 meeting did not even mention Carr Street. You did not give the residents any warning of the change before or after the meeting. You know who we are, so Why are you hiding this until it's too late? The residents should have some input. Just because property ownership is low on Carr Street does not mean you should ram this change down our throats whether we like it or not. Why are you so afraid to hear from us? I totally feel that you took advantage of our street because of the high population of minority and low-income households. You don't think we matter. This is a form of racism. Wouldn't you agree? Carr is a racist, but what you're doing to us is no better. First, you didn't want to hear from us. Second, you foisted on us the burden of changing our documents. This is no small task. Plus, the confusion for years to come. It took me years to get used to MLK Boulevard instead of Airport Boulevard. So on top of it all, you quadrupled the length of our street name. Every time we fill out our address, we feel the impact of the pain you have thrusted on us. I implore you to seriously put a pause to this name change and reopen discussion with the residents affected. Naming something in honor of someone should be a joyous occasion. Here you just have a couple of angry homeowners. If you insist on going through with this change now, can you shorten the name at least? West Carr can be Braxton Street and East Carr can be Fouché Street. That would be at least a good step. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, I have Ed Rovner. Come on up.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Ed Rovner at 119 West Carr Street. I'll speak a little quicker for the parts that you've heard before from my neighbors. I received no notice in the mail. The first notice of any of the Carrboro Town This Week emails, which I read every week, was tonight. You did not make a good attempt to contact us in the 2 months since this motion was, as others have said, rammed through. I was appalled watching the video of the process. It made my blood boil that there was not any care to hear the voices of the 50-plus residents impacted. I too support the town continuing to honor Braxton Fouché, and you may hear of other more practical ways to do that, and I hope you'll listen. If you're set on removing the name Carr from our street, drop one letter R. Carr Street. It's simple, it's done. After considering all of our voices, if you still insist on naming the street for Braxton Fouché, there is a better way. I find West Braxton Fouché Street to be unnecessarily long. I look forward to living on the street the rest of my life, but I do not wish to spell out the long street name ad infinitum to each person I speak with. We could easily honor Mr. Fouché and show respect for the residents, as my wife pointed out, by Braxton Street on the west, Fouché Street on the east. This is a common sense idea that should be considered, and I want you to put yourselves in our shoes for the impact and spelling out West Braxton Fouché Street each time you make a transaction or engage with someone. Briefly, renumbering our house numbers is totally unnecessary. I understand some streets need numbers for growth, but on this street, there's no possibility for additional lots. The USPS person walks on foot and clearly knows where each mailbox and house are. Renumbering does not honor Braxton Fouché and just adds to the hassle of things we must change: our physical house numbers, mailbox, and signage. This will add months and years of confusion with out-of-date map databases. The 7-week timetable for this change is unreasonably short and with no justification and adds to our stress, accomplishes nothing. Let me pause before I say reducing racism will take listening compassion, cooperation, and work. The town council has skipped steps. You cannot wave a magic wand and pass this change with no input and congratulate yourselves for a job well done, though with good intentions. Take resident input, consider Braxton and Fouché separate, eliminate renumbering, and stretch the timeline. I think Braxton Fouché himself would want those in power to hear the voices of those of us without power.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Thank you, Mr. Revner. Camille Pickett. Camille Pickett. Come on up, Miss Pickett.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I'm the owner of 115 West Carr Street. I think the main issue that a lot of us homeowners and my neighbors over there for the last 10 years of my life is the issue of collaboration. That's, I think, what, as Cheryl said, we've come to expect from the town of Carrboro in terms of its governance, and we absolutely have not received that in this. It feels, to me, paternalistic to just be handed an edict of what's going to be happening with our homes with no opportunity for input except for this that I feel most of us think that we took for ourselves and that was not presented to us as an opportunity for input and collaboration. We received an email today stating that we could have known because it was published in a couple publications that I don't know how we all missed because we're all well-read, educated people, but we didn't see, we didn't know. And we certainly weren't told. We found out when I did receive the notice yesterday, and it was a complete surprise to me. That's not a good feeling from the town that you've lived in for 35 years. I grew up here. As far as the renumbering, I don't know if that there's been a poll of residents in terms of the confusion of numbering and if we're having a hard time receiving our mail. I have not, except for the notice tonight. As far as I know, everybody gets their mail. We also received in the email tonight that the town has taken good faith and intentions to take this step in a transparent, thoughtful way, and respectfully, that's absolutely not indicated by our complete ignorance of this decision. Not even this process, but this decision. And that's a bitter pill to swallow for somebody who's been so much a Carrboroite. I want to be part of the process. I don't want things handed to me. I want to be one of the people that make the decision for myself. And I'm seeing nods that that's what they want as well. Finally, we are here claiming to want to honor the legacy of Braxton Fouché. I personally, and I think I speak for almost everybody in the room, don't think a lovelier person could have been chosen for the honor. His work centers community, but this approach doesn't foster community. This approach fosters resentment and confusion, and that's not at the core of what I feel we should be doing. That's what I have.
Thank you, Ms. Pickett. Is there anyone that wants to speak that is not on the list? Ronnie, I see you. Danita. So Ronnie Dossie is actually signed up. I will come to you and then to Miss Danita Mason-Hogan. Come on up, Miss Dossie.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, Carrboro staff, and community members. My name is Ronnie Dossie, and I am here because February is Black History Month. And I've been inspired since the beginning of the month to really think about how fortunate we are to be in a community where we get to engage and interact with Black history every day. I'm sitting next to Mr. Mason, who is deeply part of that history, and thank you for being here. This makes me proud to be a Carrboro resident. And today, we have a unique opportunity to honor someone with such courage, such wisdom, and such a willingness to consistently show up to make his community better, and we could not be more fortunate. I would ask you to consider, how do I explain to my children why we should maintain a racist name that sticks to me and my family every time I hear it? They don't understand that, and neither do I. I am thrilled to support the proposal to rename Carr Street to Braxton Fouché Street. Let's move from pettiness and hate to perseverance and wisdom and reflect the value we say we want Carrboro to represent. Happy Black History Month. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stassi. Could you come up? I don't have your name. Could you state your name and... Okay, yes. Thank you.
I arrived after the opportunity to sign up
That's
because
okay.
my alarm went off at my home and I had to divert back home. But my name is Kathy Thomas. I reside at 103 West Carr Street. I've been there since 2017. And I hear proposals and considerations for alternatives, but at this time I mostly wanted to add my voice about process. In order to have the opportunity to live in Carrboro, and I lived in Chapel Hill for 26 years, but I chose to move to Carrboro because it was Carrboro. And in the process, I found out that I needed to get a variance just to build my house, and that's what I wanted to speak to. In the ordinance, it's prescribed what needed to be done, and we had to send out a notice to everyone within 500 yards, I think it was, of my home, at a set date, et cetera, et cetera. And it was to be held where public opinion can be registered. And I, in fact, decided to have it at the house that I was talking about replacing. It was the Rigsby house that Cheryl spoke of. And then it engendered 3-4 other meetings with the town council's various committees. And I had to prove myself to be granted that opportunity. And I find now that I'm a citizen here that no opportunity of any scale for something so much more significant was provided. So I would ask for a process at least similar to what was done then. And in regards to my personal opinion, I sit on a board of trustees at a university, and there were Black students who wanted to take down the names of people who were offensive for historical reasons. And I suggested abolishing a name does not abolish the hatred. It doesn't abolish anything that was known about that person. But in fact, I proposed, no one liked the idea, that you put up a plaque and describe who this person was. I suggested that if the family and descendants of this person knew that the truth would be told about this individual, they might want to have the shameful name taken down themselves. But the point is, someone suggested on the street that we could name another street, a new street, that has no impairment to having the name. I'm not against the name. I bothered to look up and read Mr. Braxton Fouché's history, and I am thrilled. That's another reason I wanted to live here. But I would suggest it doesn't have to come at the sake, nor will it accomplish taking away Julian Carr's hated history. We are living with it every single day, and having his name there or not having his name there will not change that.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Danita? Miss Danita Mason Hogan? Oh, can we get... And then you come right up afterwards, okay?
Hey there. I sit on the History, Race, and Way Forward Commission for UNC Chapel Hill, and I just wanted to, and I'm one of the people who has encouraged people to take those racist names off of the buildings at UNC. I just wanted to read a little bit from Julian Carr's speech that he gave. The present generation, I am persuaded, scarcely takes note of what the Confederate soldier meant to the welfare of the Anglo-Saxon race during the 4 years immediately succeeding
the war, when facts are that their courage and steadfastness saved the very life of the Anglo-Saxon race in the South. When the bottom rail was on top, all over the southern states, and today, as a consequence, the purest strain of the Anglo-Saxon is to be found in the 13 southern states. Praise God. I trust that I may be pardoned for one allusion, howbeit rather personal. 100 yards from where we stand, less than 90 days perhaps after my return from Appomattox, I horsewhipped a Negro wench until her skirts hung in shreds. Because of the streets of this quiet village, she has publicly insulted and maligned a Southern lady, and then rushed for protection to these university buildings where she was stationed, where was stationed a garrison of 100 federal soldiers. I performed a pleasing duty in the immediate presence of the entire garrison, and for 30 nights afterwards slept with a double-barrel shotgun under my head. I would just like to say that when James Cates was murdered in 1970, there was a contingency of UNC students who came to where Silent Sam stood, and they wanted the statue down. It has been since 1970 that students have advocated that this statue come down. What they were told is, we have a process. Let's go through this process. What it turned out to be was one excuse after another to continue to have that white supremacist statue on campus. It was the students a few years ago that took that process into their own hand and wanted the statue down. I say that process is good. I pride myself in collaboration, even with those for whom I have a disagreement in perspective. But process cannot get into the way of what is right. And we have waited long enough. He has a whole town named after him. And Braxton Fashee, I would argue, is the longest public servant in Chapel Hill or Carrboro, an honorable man. And I don't think that we should let process get in the way when it comes to giving this man this honor and taking that white supremacist name off the street. And I would end by saying, I live in Hillsborough, North Carolina, on James J. Freeland Memorial Drive. It's not too hard to write down. It's where I live. And Braxton Fashee would be something I'd be honored to write down on my address. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to address you.
Thank you, Ms. Mason Hogan. Come on up and state your name, where you're hailing from.
Yeah, my name is David Hyman. I'm a rector of Holy Trinity Anglican Church in Chapel Hill, and I just want to say just a couple things. I think like length of name is like just feels like a really it feels like a minor thing to complain about. The name of the community is Carrboro, but Braxton Fashee, his brother T, and all the folks who are part of Lincoln High School. It was just those folks. Like it feels like if they were in the military, they would have received a Purple Heart for the things that they accomplished, their sacrifices, even the ways that they, even physically injured in some of the protests around the civil rights era, and I'm coming to terms with as a native North Carolinian. So as a white man, just the courage and what those folks achieved. I just want to like speak into that. I think I don't know. I'd love to see not just Braxton but his family, the Fashee family, honored in this. And again, the name of the town stays the same, Carrboro, and it'd be a beautiful thing. So, and I've gotten to know more and more folks connected to the Black community here in this area, and this would be a way just to embrace them and love them and say, we see you and we honor you. And I don't know, that feels really important to me. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Could you say your last name again? I'm sorry.
Hyman, David Hyman.
Hyman.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. I believe that is all that I have here to speak on this matter. So that ends the public comment for this evening. Town Manager Parker, we're on to the consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, council members. The first item we have on consent agenda tonight is the approval of recommended funding. This is to consider approving the Affordable Housing Advisory Commission's funding recommendation for 3 nonprofit applications to the Affordable Housing Special Revenue Fund. The second item is a resolution supporting an application for a Transportation Demand Management Grant Program. This is to request for the Town Council to consider a resolution authorizing the submittal of an application for Central Pines Regional Council's FY 25-26 Triangle Transportation Choices Grant Program. The next item is amendments to the Town Code and fees schedule for additional options at Westwood Cemetery. This is to adopt amendments to the Town Code and miscellaneous fees and charges schedule to establish new interment options at Westwood Cemetery as outlined in the approved Westwood Cemetery Master Plan, and to set associated fees and charges for these new options to cover costs and ensure cemetery sustainability. The next item is Town Code amendment to codify street name change. This is to request that the Town Council amend the Town Code to change all references of East Carr Street and West Carr Street to East Braxton Foushee Street and West Braxton Foushee Street.
Thank you, Town Manager Parker. So, council members, I will be pulling consent agenda items number 3 and number 4. I will be pulling number 3 because there needs to be a revision, some more revision to the language for section 13.8, but we can go ahead and pass the rest of that item. So we don't want to hold up folks' ability to be buried in Westwood Cemetery. And so just asking that that language come back on a future agenda once we get the language straight. And so I want to tackle this one at a time. So if I could get...
I'll move items 1 and 2.
Okay. So moved and properly seconded.
I'll second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries for number 3. I am also pulling consent agenda item number 4, Town Code amendment to codify the street name change in the interest of transparency and because of my relationship with Braxton Foushee. So I will not be voting or discussing on this matter. Council members.
I would also like to move item 3, with the exception of the language in section 13.8, to come back before us.
I'll second. Thank you for the motion. Second.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion on that? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And I am recusing myself from consent agenda item number 4. So council members, what is your pleasure? Is there discussion and or a motion? I see Councilmember Haven O'Donnell.
Yeah, I just have one question and regarding the codification of the street name change, and it's to staff to ask where was the breakdown in process for notification. I realize the timing between November and now is fraught with holiday and whatnot, but I'd like to understand why so many neighbors are feeling like they did not have the adequate notification or engagement.
And I'd like to call up Trish too to give a little bit more detail and background. She has the entire timeline. After the motion was made in November, you can come on up. Thank you.
Welcome, Ms. McGuire.
Good evening, everybody. When you made the resolution, we received the draft copy of that action a couple weeks later, early in December, and we had our staff discussion of it. And there are several steps we had to go through, and we had to basically prepare the readdressing of the street. I think in the agenda item in November, we did note that we had this guidance from the post office with regard to the street number, the numbers themselves of homes, and it's more involved than it's becoming slightly more involved because it entirely involves new numbers instead of using letters for lots that are infill lots. So we just don't have very big address ranges on those streets, so we had to take some more time with that. And so we did prepare communication to go out early in January, but the guidance from the council regarding cost assistance to residents, something that had been included in your resolution, we prepared that, and then in consultation with finance and the town attorney, determined that that really needed to be in place before we could send the notice to residents offering cost assistance. For some indirect, it's not obviously it does not cover all of the costs, and the way it's framed is everyone's not eligible. It is available for low and moderate income residents, but we had to have that codified by you, and a budget amendment had to occur, and that meeting occurred last week. And so we sent the letter out right after that in order to sort of stay within the time frame that you had identified. In November, this agenda item tonight was still on the agenda, and so I don't know if that explains the timing.
Sounds rather compressed. What I'm wondering is there a way that, we were all very swept up in the excitement of doing this. That's my personal perspective, that it was a really good thing to do and a great suggestion and timely. It's well overdue, as Dick was saying. But I'm concerned that the residents have the assistance they need now to make whatever adjustments. And since this is not time sensitive, I'd like to see us be able to go back and have the kind of engagement that helps the citizens with whatever hurdles, financial or otherwise, they will have to do this. And this is very simple, to, have the resources available from our town to sit down with any of the residents with a punch list of, what do you tackle in what order, and what's the best way of knowing that it has been successfully done. Because everything is, any of the algorithms on a computer now, you put in your name, that address comes up. And I know how hard it is to change one small thing. So I would just like to see that we create an opportunity for the neighbors to have whatever resources they need. And I wouldn't like it to have to be as a compressed time as has been set. I don't know how long it will take for some of these things to get changed. A passport is not easy to change. I don't know about, financial records and other things, but I think this is our opportunity, not to change the direction of what we want to do, but to ensure that the neighbors have the resources and the assistance they need to do what they're doing so that they feel joyous and positive about the changes we seek to make. So if that's an amendment to
I would like to
resolution.
move the item with some comments, which are that I really appreciate the comments we've heard from the residents and hearing from Trish. You know, I am struck by how complicated this is. You know, we're reminded of, you know, what happened in Chapel Hill when they changed the street name from MLK or airport to MLK. You know, that was relatively contentious, and it's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to change public spaces and redirect resources, and we are asking some residents to bear that burden, and that's real, and it's lamentable. I can't imagine on what timeline I would be thrilled to update my own passport. I really do feel that, and I don't take it lightly. All that to say, this is feedback that we did more or less anticipate and was reflected in our decision, at least from my personal perspective. And I do think that there may be some truth, you know, to how, you know, the hours of effort that the residents will have to go through here, you know, probably was smaller mentioned than the excitement around the overall prospect, but it wasn't undiscussed. I mean, I think to Ms. Rovner's point, Damon did bring this up, and this is something that we did, you know, and when we considered other streets, Broad and Alabama, we considered also other residents. This burden would fall somewhere, and it is a burden that is not a joy to ask of homeowners anywhere. It's a joy to, I think, have the opportunity to do better in our public remembrance. It's a joy. I think one reason Carr Street is so fitting, in addition to the obvious replacement of the name, is, you know, its prominence and location in our downtown. I think this is a good place for Braxton Fouché to be remembered. I think it's a street that, as we heard, many longtime Carrboro residents who have played a big role in our town's identity have called home for a long time. It's a consequential Carrboro street. And so I don't want to sit up here and sound fatuous and mealy-mouthed. I understand some displeasure from some folks who are bearing a burden that we are going to ask you to bear. And I am very, very appreciative of you for doing it and your time. And with that, I will move the item.
For further discussion? I'll second the item. I have a question that I'll just throw out for council to consider. My thinking is this, you know, we thought about a number of streets. I do not want to see this soured for Braxton. Should we be talking about, you know, so it was interesting. So I was present when the motion was made, had not yet been sworn in. And you could really feel a palpable joy in the room, which we are not feeling tonight. My question is, should we be thinking about seeking a street that would like the name? I do think that Carr Street is the most appropriate one, an appropriate position in the town. There's a reason that we talked about Alabama, right? And I still volunteer and would be happy to speak with my neighbors. That's kind of an incomplete thought there, but that's, you know, what I'm thinking, and I'm interested in hearing what your thoughts are, folks. I believe Danny is running this.
Am I currently presiding? If we're
Because I believe you are currently be presiding.
All right, everybody. Council Member Posada.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. So when I look at the decision we made in November, it was based on a number of things. One, the history of that street, or the history of the person that street is named after. The person who has given so much of his blood, sweat, and tears to this town and to the fight for equity and our Black and brown folks and our community as a whole. So when I think of this, the location of this street, the prominence of the person that it was named after, and the impact that that person had, I re-say what I said that night, that I can't think of a better person to rename that street, and taking account so much harm that one person did, and replacing that with someone who has given his life to community. Another point that I would make is that we're going to have our library is being completed, right? We have an opportunity to, and Madam Manager, have we decided on the address of that library?
The name of the library?
No, like the actual address of the library.
Yeah.
203 South Greensboro.
Okay,
still.
203 South Greensboro. So what I'm thinking is, if there is a possibility of in the future having the library addressed on Braxton Fouché Street rather than South Greensboro, I don't know if that's a possibility.
I mean, the way the building is designed, we would not address that building on Carr Street or Braxton Fouché
It's a
Street.
technical decision. Okay, and that's fine. That's fine. But I go back to the point that now we would have a place where we're going to have many in our community, a lot of young people coming in, and this building, even though it won't be addressed with Carr Street, it would be on Carr Street instead of Braxton Fouché Street, going back to the history of this person in the town, the prominent of the street. I go back to the importance of renaming the street, and I hear the concerns of the residents. I really do. That's part of the reason that I was one of the folks that asked that we put in some assistance to help residents go through this change. And I also, like the Mayor Pro Tem, would not have an ideal time to have to change all the paperwork that I currently hold. So I get that. But I'm thinking of not just the burden that we are asking residents to take on, but the benefit to the community that will be long lasting if we choose to honor, the first Black elected official of Carrboro, the person that helped Black folks get registered and vote in Carrboro, the person that put his life on the line multiple times for Carrboro. Just think about that. I think that's when we look at the mission and vision of Carrboro and like the values that we stand with. For me, it's about that. It's about standing with the values that we aspire. Thank you, Mr.
Councilmember Haven O'Donnell.
Yeah, maybe I wasn't clear. I don't think this is an either or. I think we have committed to do this. We have found the most appropriate and most honoring of places to do it. And, I think we can be responsive to neighbors who are going to be burdened. And I think we can go back and be supportive in the process based on the feedback we get from the neighbors on what they need. I think that conversation needs to be had with the neighbors. I believe there's something like 40 some odd neighbors. I don't know how many are, the homeowners. It doesn't matter. I think everyone who's there needs to be part of the conversation. And I think our town staff is well equipped to hold a conversation and find out just what the needs are, so that going forward, it's a yes and, it's not an either or. I don't think anybody would not feel 100% behind it were the process to be more engaging with the folks who have to make these changes. So I'm asking for an amendment to say that in terms of the timing, that we ask staff to meet up and work with the residents so that we understand from them what their needs are. Some may be financial, but others just may be, help me to go through this lengthy process and know, what's the punch list of all of the things that will have to be changed. Because for sure, a resident on their own is never going to be able to think of all of the things that, like I said, anybody who works with a computer and orders anything online, every single one of the vendors that you work with, they would all have to be changed. It's things like that that we don't want to cause undue burden without inviting residents into an engaging process. That's all I'm asking for here, not to change the direction or the the goal, but to be embracive of the burden that we're putting on residents so that they can be part of the joy we have when we unveil the name.
The motion on the. Sorry, can't help you with
So
that.
I've asked for a friendly amendment.
Yeah, the point is well made. And for my personal, I'm going to decline to accept the friendly amendment because I am disinclined to manage our staff's process on this from behind the dais. One of the things that, as we talk about this, that occurs to me that probably needs a little more airtime is this is a public street, and these are public resources that go into maintaining it. And it feels a lot better to clean and repair Braxton Fouché Street than it does to clean and repair Carr Street. Which is a little bit glib, given the difficulties that we're discussing. But I am reminded, we have discussions like this all the time. And at the end of the day, we have people who want bollards on a public street, but the public interest in the public street prevents the installation of bollards that residents who are near in the radius might want. We have, any manner of conflicts between public and private interest on public streets, any range rather. And so all to say, I think that this is, it's difficult. I have a hard time imagining that there exists a street on which we wouldn't get this feedback. I do, I think that the burden here, while considerable administratively, I don't think is an enormous risk, practically speaking. I got my tax documents at 107 Colson for 12 Sparrow for years and years, because that's what the developer incorporated it as. My driver's license right now is for 111 Glosson. Renters, the invocation of renters, travel on passports with separate addresses all of the time. None of which is to. I don't want to minimize. I think it's important that everybody who's a part of this discussion remembers that we are asking a minority, a small number of people, to carry a burden for the majority of us. But I feel very secure in the majority interest in this instance. And so, with due respect and appreciation for your thinking, Councilmember Haven O'Donnell, I will decline the amendment. I'm seeking a second. So there is a motion on the floor. It has been seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All in favor, please say nay. Motion carries unanimously.
Town Manager Parker, we did finish it.
Yeah, I'm out. That's the end of my time. Back to you, Mayor.
Finish the. That's what I was saying. Town Manager Parker, council members, I'd like to call for a 5-minute recess, if you don't mind. Thank you. After a brief recess, Town Manager Parker, on to other matters.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The first item is a resolution amending the Water and Sewer Management Planning and Boundary Agreement. This is to consider adoption of a resolution amending the Water and Sewer Management Planning and Boundary Agreement requested by the town of Chapel Hill to expand the service boundary in the southern part of Chapel Hill along the US 15501 corridor to the Chatham County line. Presenting the item is Trish McGuire, Planning Director for the Town of Carrboro, Judy Johnson, Assistant Director of Planning for the Town of Chapel Hill, and Vishnu Gangadaran, Director of Engineering and Planning from OWASA.
I'm going to start off and then hand off to Judy, and Vishnu's here if there are questions. I'm sorry.
1 second, Ms. McGuire. I'm
Sure.
sorry. There are a number of people here that would like to give public comment. Council members, would you like to hear? Would you like to hear from staff first, or?
Staff first, since they're up there.
No problem. Good to go.
Okay. Sure. Thank you very much. So the outline for what's in the slides is just a quick overview of what's in the water and sewer planning, management planning and boundary agreement, summary of the requests that Chapel Hill has shared with the other partners to the agreement, and then a summary of the requests that the town council made when you reviewed this request earlier this year on January 9th. A little bit of the update on the process and schedule in the draft resolution is here for us to take a look at. So this agreement, which we call WASAMBA, was established in 2001. It followed many years of work on this notion of trying to comprehensively plan for service areas for utility extensions and amongst really almost all of the local governments in Orange County. And the agreement itself was finalized in 2001, and it's been in place since then and has been amended a couple of times in that period of time. Since that period of time. So the request that Chapel Hill put forward came from a petition that Aaron Nelson from the Chamber presented to the Chapel Hill Town Council in June of last year. The Town Council discussed it on 2 occasions, and then on November 15th, they did adopt a resolution approving an amendment which would expand the boundary for the primary service area for OWASA to include this area over here. So this is 15501. Star Point's right down here, so we're down here at the Chatham County line. So that the area would be expanded to include this portion of Chapel Hill's jurisdiction outlined in gold. And Judy can speak more thoroughly if you have questions about this, but the linkages, the justification for this requesting this change and resolving to support an amendment to the agreement relate to long-range planning interests the town of Chapel Hill has identified that this providing water and sewer in this area can help achieve. Yes.
Thank you, Ms. McGuire. There have been several amendments already to this agreement, correct? Could you speak to those, maybe 3 or 4? Or is it more?
Well, I did summarize those in the timeline for the. Let me just go to the very beginning, and I can quickly summarize those for you. The changes have been, most recently, we made a change to the agreement to add a few pieces of property in Chapel Hill's jurisdiction, actually, they were sort of partially served, if I remember. The line was cutting the properties, and so some lots were partially served, but not the entirety of the lots. That was the most recent change, and it was sort of, I think it was right up,
Yeah, it was
relatively
Arboretum
close.
and up
Yeah.
right at the end of that.
So that was one change that occurred. That was in 2020. There was a change earlier in October in 2020 as well that related to a change in Hillsboro's primary interest area. There have been changes in the Efland service area related to planning that Orange County has done for Efland. The town of Carrboro put forward an amendment to, it's not shown on the map, but to looking for our ghost map on the wall. so familiar with having it there for many years. But in any case, there were some properties just for us right below the Kent Woodlands neighborhood off of Smith Level Road that we had identified as really should have been included in the map to begin with. So those are the kinds of changes that have occurred.
Yeah, and I guess I mentioned that, all that to say that, while we don't do it often, You
Yes.
know, it has, been done for various reasons with surrounding jurisdictions, including us.
Absolutely. And this particular area, Chapel Hill, had it within as an expected service area initially prior to the Wasamba, but really in their planning. And then they changed their urban services boundary. But as the BRT planning has come, as transit has come, as Southern Village and other things have come, and changes in Chatham, just seeing this as a corridor where there really is an opportunity for additional intensity of development, and support of water and sewer really can facilitate that.
Exactly.
Is that a sufficient response? Okay, thank you. Sure thing. So when you all reviewed the request on January 9th, you did direct us to bring back to you a resolution which would allow support of the amendment going forward. You asked for some information about the watershed boundaries, because it had come to light that down at the southern part of the jurisdiction, part of the area that's included within the proposed boundary change, some of the mapping has become better over time, and the exact line of where the watershed boundaries between the University Lake watershed and the Jordan Lake watershed weren't reflected in the way the zoning is laid down over those same properties. And so Chapel Hill and Orange County both have been taking a look at this, and we've got a slide that updates on that, and a couple of maps that were presented in a packet to the county commissioners in their packet this evening for information. You also asked for some information about Chapel Hill's affordable housing requirements, and Judy has provided those. They're in the agenda. There's a couple of slides, and she'll walk you through those, as well as talking about what the town is thinking as they move forward with additional density approved for developments in this area, should the amendment go forward, and how they would see those long-term affordability being provided there. And then we did provide, as Hope just mentioned, some more information about the context and history of Wasamba that we provided in your agenda packet. If you have any other questions about that, happy to try and walk through or dig in on more details for those, if that's okay. So for watersheds and stormwater, the town of Chapel Hill has been looking into this question, and they're working on updated maps. And I don't know, Judy, do you want to speak to this point? I'll let you talk.
Just a little bit on that. Good evening. I'm Judy Johnson with the Town of Chapel Hill Planning Department. We have been reviewing these the map line there. I mean, our map, we have the Jordan Lake watershed comes down Smith Level, and everything to the east of that is in the Jordan Lake watershed. And as Trish was saying, as mapping has gotten better, we believe that there is a portion of the University Lake that kind of creeps over across that. So our stormwater engineers are working on this now. They hope to have this into the state by the end of this month. The process is that the state then reviews it and says, yeah, that's great, or whatever. And then we, as the town, work through we have to change our ordinance to include University Lake a water supply watershed. We do not have that in our ordinance. So we will go through a process to incorporate that into our land use management ordinance and have that available, or that would be part of our ordinance. Expectation is that in reading the state law, this can happen concurrently with the state review. We don't want to get too far out ahead of that, so we're kind of waiting to get some feedback from the state before we proceed. But do expect that we will have those maps, the change in the lines submitted by hopefully the end of this month.
And so it says here that any changes to Wasamba have no impact on the watershed maps.
Exactly. That's completely, whatever the water supply watershed is there, the regulations, if it's University Lake or Jordan Lake, they would apply.
To those rules.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
And I did just download the maps that are in the agenda item that Cy Stober and Orange County put together. And this is just a representation. These are not the town of Chapel Hill's maps.
Correct. Our maps actually show the University Lake encroaching further to the east of 15501. So we're reconciling these maps, working with our folks looking at the topos and things out there to accurately depict that line. So that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah. And the point Judy was making is that currently this is the line that shows where the University Lake watershed stops. And not uncommon that the roads often follow ridges, and they serve as that kind of break point, but it's not always a perfect, line being drawn in that way, or road being constructed right there on the ridge. So this is an illustration that is just to kind of represent the fact that this is being explored further, and the more detailed map will come from Chapel Hill.
And just in my rough calculations using GIS, which is pretty limited skill set, it's between 7 and 10 acres of land here that we're talking about of these parcels. You know, it's 10 or 12 different pieces of land, parcels that are shown here in the pink, and then have the hatching on them that would be impacted by the change to the Wasamba boundary, and also impacted by the change to the water supply watershed line. So it is not a large area, and I think the whole area that we're looking at is 60 acres. So it's a small percentage, but it certainly is an important percent that we're not going to skip over. And I do think, as what Trish said, that maps have evolved over time, and this change or this discrepancy has come to our attention.
This is just your affordability. Tell us about it.
So just to give you a very high level, so we have kind of two processes for affordable housing. One is when we look at for sale products, and that's our inclusionary zoning ordinance. There is a 15% requirement of the market rate homes to be affordable, with half of those at 80% and half at 65% of the AMI. We also have a corresponding we use it for rental. There's a council expectation that if there is a rezoning, that there would be an accompanying 15% affordable of those. So the for sale product is the 99-year model that we use. The rental is typically a 30-year process or 30-year timeline. And those, we have been trying to push those AMI levels lower because, from what I understand, I'm not the housing person, but 80% rent or 80% AMI equals almost the fair market rent. So trying to get those down to a lower level. And as they are associated or accompanying a rezoning application, and we do almost everything as a conditional zoning, there's a lot of negotiation that happens between our town council and the applicant. So happy to answer any questions about that, but that's kind of in a nutshell what we do.
And I know you've been exploring kind of at a high level the way you would be looking at affordability going forward with this area.
Yeah, so one of the things we've been asked about, or I've been asked about, is it is what are we thinking of in this area? So this last year we spent a tremendous amount of time working through, we called it either gentle density, missing middle, trying to do that infill type of housing stock, understanding the scarcity of homes here that are not capital A affordable, but affordable to most of us, and trying to create that type of housing stock there. So the interest is along this corridor where we know we will have and do have good transit services, that we have housing opportunities, density. We're looking at creating housing, and fortunately we're in the middle of an ordinance rewrite, so we're hoping to create zoning districts that will get to us what we want. We're looking for, it could be triplexes, quadplexes, duplexes, cottage courts, townhomes, that sort of thing. We are not looking for the large apartment complexes that everybody loves over on Ephesus in that area. I mean, that is not at all the vision. The vision is to create these, a townhome community or a cottage court, that sort of thing, much lower density than the large apartment complexes, but more dense than the 1 acre zoning that we have in that area. And so creating that opportunity for diverse housing stock in this area, which we think is critical to all of our existence here.
You have a draft resolution in your packets, and it is pretty much almost identical to the Town of Chapel Hill's resolution on this point, which is something we certainly try to have occur when we're doing resolutions of change to amend this document and others. And if you do adopt it, it would support the change to Appendix A of Wasamba, which would add this area to the Owasso primary service area, and it is about 360 acres. The schedule that we have currently this does require unanimous approval of the action of all the parties to Wasamba, and our current anticipated dates, or your action today is anticipated with this agenda item on the agenda. March 14th, I think, is still, no, sorry.
Orange County is.
Orange County is March 14th. Sorry, it's
March
flipped. I
17th.
have these flipped. My apologies.
It would be in April.
Okay. Hillsborough is looking at February 12th for discussing this next week. And then after that would follow the work in Chapel Hill to, deal with the additional amendments to their future land use map and other amendments to the ordinance and so forth.
I did want to add in, if we can go back to the map, I just wanted to share a touch of background as to where these boundary lines came from. So the boundary to the this side, so obviously Smith Level Road, and this happened shortly after you and Chapel Hill Town Council adopted a resolution to preserve the rural character of Smith Level Road. So we were trying to be fairly careful to not have the lots that are fronting basically along Smith Level Road included in this expansion area. And then conversely, on the opposite side, Old Listra is running here. So trying not to have impact the character of Old Listra. We don't have a similar resolution on that, but trying to be thoughtful about that and trying to focus the lots along 15501. This lot here is a town-owned 12-acre parcel that we have identified for an affordable housing site. With that bus rapid transit, if I can get the mouse, it is terminating up here at basically with the park ride there in Southern Village, and we know there is service that heads further south, and being bus gives us a lot of flexibility because it's not a light rail or something like that, that it may not be as frequent as it will be, from Eubanks down to Southern Village, but there's, if it's not every 5 minutes, and maybe it's every 10 or 15 minutes that it heads south. So folks along this corridor would have, tremendous access to transit service and be able to get to many places. So I just wanted to share, there was, a lot of consideration about the boundaries and why they were drawn, and trying to honor that, well, not trying to, but honoring that resolution that both you and the town of Chapel Hill adopted for Smith Level.
Vishnu, do you have anything to share? You're just going to stand there and, smile, like you do.
Vishnu Gangadhar, Director of Engineering and Planning for OWASA. No, I didn't have anything prepared. We provided analysis to support the town of Chapel Hill's decision back in November. I'm happy to answer questions about that.
Thank you, Vishnu. And council members, are there any questions or comments? Councilmember Haven O'Donnell.
Do we want to have public comment first before we get into discussion?
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, please.
Yeah, I have a list, and I will start with Diane Martin, Chapel Hill. Diane Martin, come on up. 3 minutes, please. And thank you.
We good?
All right, here you go.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak again. I'm Diane Martin, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the Wasamba application for Holy Trinity Anglican Church. And when we were here last month to make a case, we were really focusing on the social justice issue, the idea of more affordable and missing middle housing stock, the idea of good water quality. There are many people that are in that area now that don't have good water, and so for them to have the opportunity for good water. And we saw all three of those as a kind of a social justice issue. I mentioned to you last month that we also have a vested interest in that we have the opportunity to partner with a developer in 50 acres off to the right across the street from where the town of Chapel Hill has its 12 acres. And what I wanted to do tonight, not repeat what I said last time, but to actually show you more detail. And I wanted to show you what our actual parcel of land would look like, and I gave you each a handout there, what it would look like without water and sewer, and what it will look like with water and sewer. And so we've actually had this land with a developer, perked and tested, the soils have been tested, and this is what we could get out of that land right now, about 12 units, 10 $3 million McMansions and 2 affordable units with Chapel Hill's requirement for affordable units, and a church, which of course that's our interest, but we would like to see a little bit more than that. With water and sewer, here's 140 townhomes, or it could be other, as Judy was talking about, cottage homes, duplexes, triplexes, but this is what 140 townhomes would look like with the church. And out of those 140 townhomes, 21 of them would be affordable housing with a capital A. And as Judy said, half of them would be at the 65% AMI and half would be at the 80% AMI. And so I think you can sort of see the difference between this and this if in terms of that one piece of land. And so that's why we are really committed to having this go forward. Also notice the retention ponds. There was a lot of concern last time about stormwater irrigation, all the retention ponds being responsible for all of the stormwater on that piece of property. And so we urge you once again to approve, I don't know how that got all, we urge you once again to approve this initiative for more missing middle and affordable housing and being right across the street from the town's affordable housing right along a transit corridor. So I just want to thank you once again for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Next, we have Ms. Dolores Bailey, Chapel Hill. Empowerment, Inc.
Good evening. First, let me say Happy New Year to those of you all who I haven't seen this year, and congratulations to the newest members that I haven't seen since you've won. My name is Dolores Bailey. I'm the Executive Director of Empowerment Incorporated, and I am here in support. I want to thank you, Carrboro, for your support of affordable housing, particularly for the affordable housing that Empowerment provides, and the consent agenda item that happened earlier. We have so much unmet housing needs. I don't have to tell you, but I'll just remind you again. In this that we're talking about, there's a middle missing income piece. I will always stand for those at the 60 to 30% AMI and hopeful to be able to provide some of that when this line is moved. We need all the housing affordable units we can get. The town of Chapel Hill is committed to developing 10 of its acres and committed to providing affordable housing units on those acres. We need them more and more. We need them to get built. We need them to be built yesterday. And we need to have them connected to water and sewer. Please vote yes tonight. Extend the water sewer service boundary and open the door for more affordable housing. I will always be looking for and expecting that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Next, we have Ms. Bridget Pemberton Smith. How you doing? Good.
Hi, my name is Bridget Pemberton Smith, and while I don't live in Carrboro, I work and play in Carrboro, and I own a business at 205 Lloyd Street. I'm here representing the Carrboro Business Alliance. So for price and availability of homes is one of the biggest challenges for Carrboro businesses in terms of attracting and keeping employees here in Carrboro. They really want to be able to, live where they work, which I think most of us do. That's why we have the Carrboro Business Alliance has 4 policy priorities, and one of them is affordable housing. The area that's under consideration for the water and sewer extension service expansion is served by the transit system as well as it's close to downtown Carrboro. So it would be a perfect place to look at putting in affordable housing. And that would be housing that the employees of the Carrboro businesses could take advantage of. With any possible future affordable housing expansion in this area, it will require water and sewer. I mean, right now, I think most of the lots out there are on wells, and that's just not going to work for affordable housing. So we really need to have the water and sewer extended out there. So I am asking you to please vote tonight to extend the water and sewer service boundary. And I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you guys tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Eric Chupp, Carrboro. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Town Council. Appreciate you hearing our comments tonight. I'm speaking in favor of the extension or the possibility of an extension down the 15501 corridor. Some of you know me, several of you know me. I've been developing communities in Carrboro for the last, well, it's been over 30 years now. I still have a couple of kids in the school system, one that walks to Carrboro Elementary and one that's a student at Smith, so I'm a member of the community and a land developer. However, we have no interest in this section of Chapel Hill. What I do have an interest in is seeing communities built along transit corridors. I have been the chair of the Land Use and Regulatory Affairs Committee of the Home Builders Association for probably close to a decade, and have tried over that decade to convince Chatham County to extend sewer along that chief corridor, that chief north-south corridor that runs up to Chapel Hill. It's absolutely vital. It will be one of the busiest northwest corridors in the area, and it needs density. It will be a gradual process no matter what happens and how quickly this goes through. OWASA is not in the business of extending water and sewer, so that will be an incremental process, a thoughtful and deliberate process as that sewer is extended. But I think it's very, very important that we look at doing this kind of thing, just this very kind of thing, along our valuable transit corridors. What we don't want to happen, in my mind, is a proliferation of the $1 million homes on 1 acre lots on water and sewer that you see lining Mans Chapel Road. I think Chapel Hill deserves, and this area deserves, better than that along its major transit corridors. So thank you very much, and that's all I have.
Thank you. Next, I have Holly Fracaro. I think I'm pronouncing Fracaro. Is that correct? Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I am not a resident of Carrboro, but I do represent the Home Builders Association of Durham, Orange, and Chatham counties, and so I'm here on behalf of my stakeholders. I think that Judy and Trish laid out an excellent illustration of what Chapel Hill will require, and so hopefully you do not have concerns about the stormwater management challenges that may be presented, but that might be something that you're concerned about. And so I'm here to remind you of what you just heard, that the stormwater regulations in Chapel Hill are stringent. They require that volume, rate, and quality of water leaving a property be no different than pre-development levels. The rigorous design standards, engineering, and public review requirements in Chapel Hill will apply to all new projects. And I just want to share with you, I have a well on my property. I live in Mebane. November 30th of last year, my well died, of 2022. October 26th, I finally got a new well drilled. Thankfully, I hit water at 140 feet. I was anticipating a $25,000 price tag. I went for almost an entire year, not using much water, filling jugs. It cost me $16,000, thankfully, because of the hitting at the rate that I did. So I've experienced this failure firsthand. I'm a single woman. A family would have had to leave the house. So it's a really important thing for all of the reasons that we've said, and so I hope that today you will vote yes for the extension. Thank you.
Thank you. BJ Warshaw. BJ Warshaw. Come up. Mm-hmm.
Good evening. My name is BJ Warshaw, and I live at 1439 Smith Level Road in the Chapel Hill ETJ. A couple weeks ago, I wrote to you about my concerns around the Wasamba Amendment you're voting on tonight, and to summarize, the town of Chapel Hill has not completed its LUMO rewrite. We don't yet know the intended rezoning for the southern area along 15501. The town used inaccurate watershed maps and failed to consider impacts on the University Lake watershed. The town has done no environmental impact study, including potential effects upon the Fan Branch Creek, which feeds into Wilson and Morgan Creeks along floodplains. The town and others misleadingly claim that Wasamba needs to change to assist existing residents with poor well water quality, while in fact the current agreement already allows residents to tap into the existing Owasso lines along 15501 to mitigate adverse public health conditions. The town wants affordable housing on their 12-acre tract, but has conducted no feasibility study that I've seen, inclusive of the new water and sewer lines, the cost of which will be burdened by developers. And the town has a secondary goal of missing middle housing, but no direct ability to control home or rent pricing. Postponing the vote on amending Wasamba doesn't mean you're opposed to growth or affordable housing goals. It means requesting further due diligence and more assurances that those goals will actually be met and that negative unintended side effects will be avoided. If developed irresponsibly, I fear commercial sprawl, I fear 501 apartment complexes, I fear we'll mostly see expensive rentals which are not covered by Chapel Hill's inclusionary housing policies instead of affordable for sale units. I fear we'll sacrifice green spaces for shoddy construction, parking lots, and permeable surfaces with inadequate stormwater management. I fear increasing flood risks in adjoining neighborhoods due to potentially stale and insufficient building regulations, as per UNC study and FEMA flood maps that I emailed you earlier today. I fear increases in traffic and cost of municipal services, and the clear cutting of another section of forest that's home to old growth trees and countless wildlife, replaced by more soulless sprawl. I'm 100% in favor of affordable housing, increasing diversity, equitability in Carrboro, making it livable for years to come. But I'm also in favor of sensible development and of being good stewards to the land in the face of exponentially worsening climate crisis and maintaining our small town aesthetics. Folks claim that development along 15501 is inevitable. I wholeheartedly reject the idea that we have to start by amending Wasamba. Let's comprehensively plan first. Let's get the zoning in place. Let's build up closer to town centers and not out. And let's carve out better conservation easements, both from the road and from perennial waterways, before letting developers propose more clear cutting. I believe Chapel Hill has put the cart before the horse. If the vision is for townhomes and duplexes, let's set that zoning first. The Wasamba signatories put the water and sewer boundary in place for reasons with intentionality. A fair and inclusive process involves careful planning, recognizing trade-offs, and mitigating risk. Please postpone this vote to amend Wasamba. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one more person signed up, Joe Fenton, Yorktown Drive.
Okay, I'm Joe Fenton, 508 Yorktown Drive, down in Heritage Hills. I'm not here petitioning the Carrboro Town Council to vote no on the proposal before you to extend water and sewer down 15501. What I am petitioning you to do is require those requesting this extension to first complete their due diligence and present a comprehensive plan to the residents of Carrboro and Orange County. Much of the area under consideration is rural and includes numerous waterways. Developing the 15501 corridor will have a huge impact on the southern part of the county. It seems only prudent that a comprehensive environmental study needs to be completed prior to being granted approval of this amendment or this request. Then there's a question of what this development will look like. How will these parcels be rezoned? It seems only fair that Carrboro and Orange County have a seat at the table when rezoning is discussed. The vote tonight for unconditional approval of the extension of the water and sewer would negate any input from the town of Carrboro. Unplanned development in this corridor will have a huge impact on Carrboro and its residents. If the members of the town council are in support of this proposal, I ask that intent to grant approval be added to the amendment, and this be given tonight, contingent upon completion of an environmental impact study, followed by joint discussions pertaining to rezoning, land use, and proposed developments. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else? Okay, come on up. Just call you Mr. Chamber. Ian. Welcome.
Mayor, council members, I'm Ian Scott with the Chamber for Greater Chapel Hill Carrboro. We're the initial petitioner on this. You've heard from Aaron Nelson on multiple occasions. We're here just to, again, reiterate our request that you vote yes to approve this water sewer extension, and to remind you that extending the water and sewer boundary will approve no other development. This is not going to rush to develop. It will take time, and each of those applicants, each of those property owners will have to go through the thorough review process. Any required rezonings will have to comply with all the standards in the land use management ordinance, all of the safeguards and protections that ensure that the development that happens around our community happens responsibly will apply to all of the jurisdiction in the area that we're considering, that you all are considering tonight. And finally, I'd like to ask you to help send that signal in with your vote that this is a region that really does put itself where its mouth is, put its actions where our mouths are on affordable housing. That really is the biggest point here. There's no way to deliver units at a price point affordable to most of the people working in our community at the lot size that would be required in this area. And if we're not able to build units that are affordable to people who work in our community in the area where we're building transit for this community, where else can we do it? This is an important location, and we need to send the signal now that the intent is to plan this properly, do it well, but give that predictability to the landowners in that area to know what's coming. Thank you for your support. We appreciate the time to speak tonight.
Thank you. I don't see anyone else that is going to speak, so council members, discussion? Any discussion or questions on the information we have received? Oh, yeah, that's right. Councilmember Haven O'Donnell, Councilmember Frey.
My question, it's kind of been underscored that any changes to Wasamba will have no impact on the watershed maps. So what is, and I guess, Judy, this may be for you, but I'm not sure, maybe for you and Trish. So why wouldn't we wait till the end of February or whenever those maps are completed and accurate? Because that would give not only Carrboro and Chapel Hill residents an idea of what has come, but also to wait for the feedback from the state. Why wouldn't we wait for that? I'm not understanding.
To me, it comes down to that they're two separate paths. I mean, the water supply watershed ordinance is irregardless of whether it's inside the urban services boundary or not. That they are two separate processes that are happening. They happen to coincide in time at this point. It's not going to. It would not change either direction. I mean, if the state didn't approve our maps, it wouldn't change the water sewer boundary. If the state did approve it, it wouldn't change the water sewer boundary expansion. So they're completely, I mean, it's just that they're happening at the same time. There's no relationship between one to the other.
So the accuracy of the map is what you're saying, in terms of the university watershed, that's not important in the decision-making?
I'm not saying that it's not important. That those regulations are there regardless of whether the urban services boundary is the Wasamba agreement moves. If working through the state and the change of that water supply of the University Lake and the Jordan Lake, I mean, there's obviously a significant difference in the impervious that's allowed in each of those zones. That's a very important decision, but it has little, if anything, to do with the water supply or the urban services boundary, the Wasamba agreement. They're independent. Each acts, if one is there, I mean, we have areas that are in the Jordan Lake water supply that don't have water and sewer, and they're subject to the Jordan Lake, and we have those that are in urban services, and they have. So it's that's why I say that it's not that one is important and one isn't. It's they stand on their own.
So when folks in the community are asking for an environmental study or a comprehensive plan looking at the environmental impacts, why wouldn't we want to do that?
So we will, and doing that sort of planning is from a time equaling money is a substantial undertaking of cost. Either it's my staff time or we hiring a consultant to help us with that staff time. There's a lot of money associated there. If we're not going to expand the water and sewer boundary, we don't want to allocate and spend all that money. Just because if the change goes forward and we do expand that boundary, it doesn't mean, like I think it was Ian said, that people are not going to be coming there. It is all zoned residential low-density 1-acre zonings. If they want to change, they have to come through the Chapel Hill Town Council to change that zoning. We do have a very rigorous process. I think you can ask other builders who are here that our process is difficult to get through. And we would, at that point, be looking at doing that. If this process does go forward, we are also developing internally natural areas resilience mapping, and I've been meeting with our GIS folks to work through what happens and how are we going to, we have resource conservation districts along creeks, 150 feet from each bank, so a 300-foot swath for a perennial creek like the Fan Creek or Wilson Creek would have a 300-foot buffer around them. It may be more than that. We're trying to look at, this is an opportunity for us to really do some, to me, top-notch planning to get this done right. And so we haven't done that. We're starting it. We're starting to visualize and start thinking about what we want. I mean, I've heard from residents who live there that they want to maintain a green corridor along 15501. So, is that we have a 30-foot buffer. Is that a 30-foot buffer along both sides of 15501? I mean, trying to work through what does this look like? Being able to create, having that, the Greenway connection. We in Chapel Hill have adopted a complete community framework as part of our comprehensive plan, bringing we call them everywhere to everywhere greenways. I mean, coming down the Fan Branch, I mean, great access up to the school, and the same with on the other side, on the Wilson Creek. We have South Creek is being developed there across from Southern Village, and being able to connect up there, building out those greenways, creating, and this is what we're starting the visualization. To me, it's perfect timing to have this coming through now. If this area gets expanded, then it gives us the signal, let's go ahead and we're working through our LUMO rewrite. We will we already have talked with our consultant about creating zoning districts that would be creating something like this. We also have our future land use map, which we are poised, and I have committed that we will be looking at to amend that, to modify it, to address this area. So to me, it's a chicken egg. I mean, do we do all this planning and then go through this process and say, and then what happens if we end up with a no vote? Let's get the vote that yes, we want to expand this boundary. Nothing's being built. I mean, we know Owasa's not going to go out there and build sewer lines. That those are going to be brought forward by developers. And those developers, if anybody came in tomorrow, would be subject to our Chapel Hill Town Council conditional zoning review and fairly vigorous rezoning efforts.
The only other question I have regarding affordable housing, and this is the larger question, affordable housing. This is not, 20. It's not really so much about 21 affordable units, right? That could be the 15%. It's what is being planned for so that affordable housing is predicated on helping to establish a pathway for lease to own or creating intergenerational wealth. That's really what's missing. Starter homes and ways that folks get into the market. Rentals do not put anybody in the market. In fact, they're an obstacle because it's money that, they can't, they're not banking it, they're losing it. So has that been part of the conversation at all? Because I love the idea of townhomes, but they should be, in some way create an opportunity for intergenerational wealth. I think last time we had folks here who were graduate students. It's like, yeah, perfect. How are you going to get into the market if you're renting, especially because so much of the rentals, aside from that 15%, will be market rate.
So we can't regulate if something is for sale or rent. I mean, and we've had, in our discussions we've had over the last year and a half in Chapel Hill about gentle density and diverse housing. Rental is a significant portion of our market. I think it's about half of our market is rental. It is an important component. And people who rent, I mean, I think there's probably, I was going to say not a person who's never rented, but, talking out of the side mouth, that most of us have been renters at some point in our time. There's need for it. Some people much prefer it over a home ownership, and we all have different phases and different needs. So trying to create that diversity. Not everybody wants to be a homeowner. And yes, I know they tell you it's one of the best things to do for your wealth is to have home ownership. But not everybody falls into that. So creating opportunities for different options. The person who got up and showed the site plan there, I mean, if we create zoning districts and we're actually talking about maximum lot sizes, can we make lots very small and not have them bigger? That maybe it's a 3,000 square foot lot and you can't do lots bigger than that. That's going to limit the size of the home that's on that lot. It's going to limit, obviously, the land that you're buying, which doesn't necessarily, where we can't control the price on those homes unless they're the capital A affordable. But just by limiting the size of the home and the size of the land, it is, in fact, it is a way that we in planning through zoning can do some sort of regulation to trying to create housing that is maybe not as expensive. It doesn't mean it's not a gold-plated house inside, but chances are it's going to be more affordable than the exhibit they're showing the multi-million-dollar homes on there. So that's what we're trying to create, what we can control through via zoning. Okay.
Thank you very much. A thread I wanted to pull on is something that Mr. Warshaw and Mr. Fenton brought up, the idea that we do not know what will be built. The unfortunate thing when you're trying to build affordable housing is that housing doesn't get built quickly. The good thing when you are looking at a piece of land that is currently zoned for sprawl is that housing doesn't get built quickly. One of the things I wanted to note is that because this land is in the ETJ, Chapel Hill, in the process of upzoning this to support clear density and to sort of better bring their inclusionary zoning to bear, they have to perform a rezoning just like we would. And because it's in the ETJ, that rezoning, as I'm sure all of us know, has to be provided to the county for their review because it's in the joint planning area before it can come forward. So my understanding is that that is underway. But even were it not, that's something that can be pursued in parallel with this process.
The upzoning.
The upzoning. And I would certainly suggest that we, all encourage our colleagues on the Chapel Hill Town Council to pursue that upzoning with all appropriate speed so that we know that what will be built in the area being provided with sewer service is what I think both towns are in agreement that we'd like to have more of.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just before I start my comments, I do want to restate, as I did last time this item came before us, is that I do sit on the board of directors at the Chamber of Commerce, and I have checked with our attorney to ensure that there is no conflict of interest, given that Aaron was one of the original petitioners. Nonetheless, just want to restate that for the record before I go on. With that being said, I am fully in support of this resolution. I think for many reasons I already mentioned, affordable housing is one of the things that we need to have more of. I would, as Councilmember Frey mentions, encourage our colleagues in Chapel Hill to move forward with some of these processes whenever possible, right? I understand that there has to be resources have to be used appropriately, and you don't want to use resources before you actually need to use resources. So I get that, and I do thank Judy. Apologies, Judy, for coming this afternoon and speaking to us. Again, I think this. I want to see more housing that is affordable for folks, and for that reason, Madam Mayor, whenever appropriate, I would move for the passage of this resolution. I move to the passage of this resolution.
Seconded.
All right, so we have a motion and a second for the resolution. I'm sorry, more discussion. Question, please.
Yeah.
Councilmember Merrill.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little dimension to my presumably imminent vote beyond simply yes or no. And as I imagine we're closer to the beginning of this conversation than the end of it, I'll keep it brief. The development of more transit-oriented and affordable housing is a noble and attainable goal, and I'm cautiously optimistic about this plan as presented. But the thought of performing an action without a more complete plan in place gives me pause. So I will become an enthusiastic supporter of this plan when we have something developed that spells out more specifically how we can expect this action to get us to that result.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. So I am pleased with what I've heard here this evening. I really appreciate Trish, Ms. Johnson for coming, and Vishnu. You answered all of my questions, and the possibility of more affordable housing, missing middle housing is very exciting for me. Not to mention having diverse types, of housing stock that kind of spans a broad socioeconomic status or statuses. And so I'm in favor. I'm in favor of voting for this item this evening. And if there is no further discussion, there is a motion and a second on the floor. So I'm going to call for the question. Council members are ready. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
4-2. Motion carries. Thank you. Town Manager Parker, next item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The last item on the agenda is an update on transportation projects. This is to provide the town council with a status report on a number of local transportation projects that are underway. Presenting this item is Tina Moon, our planning administrator. Somebody wanted to stay for the planned transportation.
No.
Like everybody left.
There is a game. I'm not sure.
Using the term "we" loosely.
I haven't had coffee. Surprising myself. I'm falling asleep now.
Zach, can you present? There she is.
Welcome, Tina. You have some questions about like a lot of them.
I'll try to.
I know.
Not go line by line.
I know.
Well, one big.
That's my jazzy introduction. So with that, thank you everyone for this opportunity to give you an update on transportation projects. We used to give them maybe once or twice a year, and then we got in the habit of just providing reports. And it's always a little bit challenging to figure out how best to present the information. If you've had a chance to dive through the report, you can categorize by funding source, you can categorize by source of the project, and eventually there's a little bit of overlap. So the presentation tonight is a little bit different from the way it's presented in the report to make it appeal to the audience in general. And I'll just run through it and be happy to answer questions if you have them. So in terms of guiding documents, I think it's an important reminder of where all these projects are coming from. All of these have gone through a series of vettings and reviews by the council. They're in adopted plans. They will end up in the regional long-range transportation plans, the comprehensive plan, or the metropolitan transportation plan. You'll be hearing more of that as that's being updated now. And so they all, in some cases, have a rather long background before they even get towards being selected for funding. For the town, funding comes through our capital improvement project planning process. All of our large-scale projects, which are most of the things we're going to talk about tonight, really need federal funding to get off the ground. And so that's typically an 80-20% match. And we also seek federal funding either through DOT as the pass-through, through the prioritization process, or using the MPO as the pass-through, through the regional flexible funding program, which we just had a call for, and we're waiting to hear about that. And then there are other grants. We're all enjoying the ARPA grants, but there are other grants that are more specific to trails that tend not to have quite as much funding, but we seek those when those are appropriate. And I'll note we have been quite fortunate about getting some Orange County Transit funds that we have used towards our local match. So we have been fortunate in that regard. Some of you have seen this slide before. I find it quite helpful for folks who are not familiar with DOT's prioritization process. It is a constant cycle. So about every 2 to 3 years, DOT begins this process of considering projects. So partners submit projects on a regular schedule to their MPO or RPO. It's vetted at the technical committee or the staff committee level. It is eventually adopted by that MPO or RPO board. It is submitted to DOT to go through a scoring process. We are in that scoring process now for our projects. After the scoring process, it goes back to those regional transportation planning organizations for the assignment of local points that will be coming for us in the spring. And then it goes back to DOT for the final scoring. And it becomes what is essentially their CIP, their 10-year plan for transportation projects. And the way it works out is the first 5 years is what's referred to as the items are actually programmed for funding. The second 5 years are considered developmental. If your project does not get funded through right-of-way, it will have to go through prioritization in the next cycle. The good thing about this is if you submit a project for one cycle and it doesn't get funded, you can refine your application or your project description and you can submit it in the next cycle. For the most part, we had a bit of a pause during the P6 when DOT had some funding issues, but we're picking things back up for this cycle now. So at a glance, these are some of the projects that we have underway. And most of you, I think, are familiar with at least some, if not all of these. The bike loop detector project, this has been a bit of a slog to seek federal funding for such a small project, and it was a lessons learned for us. This includes the loops that are designed to be activated by a bicycle at an intersection to keep cyclists from running the light. An important thing in our downtown. We have identified locations at 4 intersections at Roberson, at Greensboro and West Weaver, and Greensboro and Main Street, and also at West Poplar and NC 54. We had another location at Lloyd Street and East Main Street that was actually included in the resurfacing project, so we have that already in place. The Morgan Creek Greenway, Phase 1, this goes from from Smith Level Road. It will go underneath the bridge and connect to Morgan Creek West, I believe Chapel Hill is calling there. So over time, it will be a wonderful parallel track to NC 54 to Fordham Boulevard. Design is at 90%. It is the flood study work is complete. It is almost ready to be resubmitted for 100% plans. We hope to get that out for bid late spring, early summer if we're lucky, and we'll watch how that moves forward. Chapel Hill had their Morgan Creek West to about 30% design. They were kind of reevaluating their different segments along for their Morgan Creek Greenway. My understanding is that in February they will formally award that contract back for design, and that will pick back up. The Jones Creek Greenway, we're just kind of getting that finalized in terms of some necessary easements. That will be that missing piece between the concrete greenway that Orange County put in for ARA funds that connect to Morris Grove, and will make that final piece towards Lake Hogan Farms. The South Greensboro Street sidewalk project, very important. We got to 65% plans. We realized we needed to replace the water line on that side of the street. This will be on the west side. That took a little bit. We had to expand the scope of work for design. DOT has an audit process, so there were several steps. We're back on track. We're at 90% design for that. The water line work means that we do have to revisit the easements and whether there's property acquisition or easement, I guess I should say. So we're working through that now. DOT has alerted us that they would like us to include a resurfacing as part of this project, and they will contribute to that amount as part of the project. We are also working with the consultants and with DOT to include a restriping from the roundabout to the Smith Level Road Bridge to see if we can squeeze some bike lanes in. That is a work in progress. Those of you who have listened to staff give these presentations know by now that there's a relationship between vehicular lane width and speed. And so oftentimes if you can lower the speed, Chapel Hill Transit and other large vehicle drivers are comfortable with a more narrow vehicular lane. So we are working on that process. Homestead Road, and also I think some of you have heard we're working for that last block. So the sidewalk will go to the north end of Old Pittsboro. There's that one block where the house was just sadly removed, where there's this kind of transitional space. So we're working with some ARPA funding to see if we can put in a 10-foot wide path there so that cyclists going up Old Pittsboro and crossing Braxton Frusci Street will be able to make that connection from Libby-Cotton to the PTA connection. So a lot of stuff in that tight little area that we hope to see coming together soon. The Homestead Road multi-use path is largely finished. We are working through an agreement to add a little bit of extra funding to that project, in part so we can seek additional reimbursement, and in part so that we can get the bridge, that damaged section, fabricated and installed. The signalized pedestrian crossings, big deal. 3 locations across 54 where the apartments are. 2 are in Carrboro. 1 is in Chapel Hill at Kingswood and Laurel. That design is finished with that. We had hoped that DOT is managing the project. We had hoped that they would be able to bid it this spring. It looks like it's going to be September. But the town's contract, so this is, I think, about a 1.3 million project. Don't quote me on that, but thereabouts, 1.3, 1.4. Chapel Hill is contributing to it. The town's contribution of $150,000 will be covered with Orange County Transit funds. So really good collaboration there. The next projects that are in the queue, the Jones Ferry Road sidewalk, that's that missing piece. Similarly, a sidewalk for Barn Street, and then Estes Drive. And we'll be collaborating with Chapel Hill to see how best to connect our 2 pieces. You know, they have a larger section of right-of-way than we do in Carrboro. In terms of what is coming, or what we have applied for funding and hope to get, the NC 54 side path that will go from the end of Main Street, kind of past the post office, kind of flanking the Lloyd Farm development to Anderson Park. We had hoped that that was already funded. It turns out it is subject to reprioritization. This is one where design was funded, right-of-way was not. So it is subject to reprioritization. Some of you may remember what we have submitted for this round of P7, Sewell School Road side path that would be in collaboration with Chapel Hill. Some sections are, we would look at where sections were needed. Bike lanes and a sidewalk along one side of Hillsborough. This is a much needed project, which we have tried to get funded a couple of times, and hopefully we'll do a little bit better this time. And then phase 2 of the Morgan Creek Greenway. What we have submitted for regional flexible, and you've just discussed this not too long ago, so this should be fresh in your memory. A combined bike plan project for Shelton Street. This would also work for our Safe Routes to School plan. Putting in what we call kind of a pedestrian lane for East Poplar, that whole length. And then on Maple Avenue, right next to the 203 project, since that section will become one direction, to put in a contraflow for bikes. And so this little image, for those of you who aren't familiar with the contraflow term, is when you provide a lane for cyclists to go in the opposite direction. We've also asked for a little bit of extra funds for South Greensboro Street to cover funds that were lost to avoid rescission. We also, now we didn't get funding for these items at the bottom, but I just wanted you to see that we've been trying. So whenever we see an opportunity for funds, whatever seems to be the best fit, we tend to go ahead and submit for those. Some of you may be familiar with that already, but I just wanted to share that with the group. So similar to the three documents I started with, the other sources, and again, these are all pretty much folded into the comprehensive plan now, but our two Greenway master plans. And sometimes the pretty pictures are kind of nice. So for those folks who find a visual helpful, this I think is a nice way to get situated. Phase 1, this is an image of the Bowling Creek Greenway. It shows from the conceptual master plan that shows the phasing. You can see it's not north to south with the numbering, but we have so far completed these in order. So 1A was what some folks call the Wilson Park Greenway that connects to Estes. 1B, also known as the Homestead Road, Chapel Hill High School multi-use path. And then you can see right here is where that bridge is and that section is out. And then you can see the Jones Creek Greenway is actually just above phase 2, and that will be this one little missing segment here. And so for folks who are interested in the regional flexible projects and submitting phase 2 for Bowling Creek and then phase 3, 4, you can get a sense of where they fit in the system.
Tina,
yeah,
will you? We may not. If this isn't at hand, it's not that important. But when do we expect the scoring back on RFF?
So the MPO put together, we had anticipated getting information at the last technical committee meeting. Instead, we received a 100-page document, which was a compilation of the applications.
We hate that. It's a 100-page document.
And we got that pretty much at the meeting. So it is being brought back for the upcoming TC. I believe they'll provide 3 scenarios, and we can talk through how we would like to, what we would recommend to the board on how to proceed.
So the board is likely to see that this month?
Probably either February or March. I would think so, yes.
Great, thank you.
Okay, in terms of Morgan Creek, I always kind of like this image, even though it's showing the creek and not the greenway, because it just shows how it all kind of connects. And so the alignment for Morgan Creek will kind of start on the north side, and then it will cross to the south side, cross back, and so forth. So when we ran into some delays with phase 1, prices were higher than expected, so we're doing some redesign work now to get it ready to rebid. We did work with the town engineer to go ahead and analyze the remaining crossings for feasibility so that we wouldn't run into those kind of delays moving forward. And here's a quick image of phase 1. This is where it will connect underneath the Smith Level Road Bridge. There'll be a second little bridge over here, and then there'll be the main bridge, which will connect the Berry Hill kind of recreational spaces here. This will actually skirt around there. And then once we get to phase 2, there's some existing informal paths that will get folks to the destinations of, I'm saying Jordan Lake, University Lake, and hopefully over time a spur to the high school. So certainly we want to keep going for the remaining phases, but once we get to phase 2, we'll have a pretty good system available. And after our discussions with the town engineer, we've come up with a slight change to the alignment, crossing the creek earlier to avoid what was becoming a pinch point, being very close to some of the houses on Berry Hill. So that will, I think, be a much better alignment going forth. This is, some of you have seen this image before. This is showing the top 5 priorities for the bike plan. Homestead Road, we've heard about that. We do have some funding for a rectangular rapid flashing beacon. This will most likely be at the Claremont point where North and South Claremont connect, because there's enough infrastructure there, receiving infrastructure, and we are working with the Zins, as you heard from the rezoning, to put in a sidewalk and/or boardwalk as necessary with topography. I'm glad to say that the NCDOT ADA ramp project is back on track after a little bit of a delay that had started, and then without knowing all the particulars, DOT decided to terminate the contract and rebid it. So that work, some will begin in March, and then the rest of it should begin in June. They're using 2 different contractors for that. So we'll keep people up to date to the extent that we can. The Shelton Street contraflow lane is under design. We've met with the school and the church once, and we're going back to the drawing board to do some redesign, and then we'll circle back to them. We talked before about this location kind of by AutoLogic. We'll have to do a little bit more assessment because that's a little bit tight. And then the Jones Ferry separated bike lanes. I think I saw a press release go out. Work has the first stage of that, which involves the town bringing a contractor to make that existing median more narrow so there's room for bike lanes. That has been awarded. Technically, the contract has started, so we should see work on that within the next week or so. That has to be finished by May so that DOT can do their resurfacing. We're hoping to see some milling around the drainage inlets. I know that's been challenging for cyclists over the years. And we're trying to decide, it will be a buffered lane. I don't believe we'll get the delineators in. There just isn't space, but we're now trying to determine if we should add a green pavement marking component or just stick with white pavement markings. In terms of safety projects, we've touched about the ramps. We have a meeting with DOT to talk about speed limits again. This has been kind of an ongoing effort. And again, the rectangular rapid flashing beacons, the one we talked about on Homestead, and then the second one will be by McDougal. We're also still working with our partners at Chapel Hill about signal timing in the downtown area in particular. So in terms of building the network, I think it is helpful, and we've shifted the way we write the report so that you're not just looking at individual projects, but actually starting to see how they work together. So many thanks to Duncan Dodson in our office for helping with this. But going from north to south, and you can take a look at the legend here. Greenways are in green, sidewalks are the orangey color, and resurfacing also includes bike lanes. So that's the pinkish color. Things that are already constructed or have funding are the solid color. There's the dash line for things that are under design, and then the dots are for things that we're applying for. So you can begin to see these potential connections coming together. And I think I've touched on, here's the up to Calvander, the rapid flashing at McDougal, the rapid flashing at Claremont. This is phase 1B already installed. Sewell School Road, possible side path, phase 3 and 4, and then phase 2. So we're only eligible for 2 projects for the regional flexible, but these are what we have submitted. And then this is the 54, the 54 side path. Towards the center, more in town, we have here the resurfacing for North Greensboro, which will connect on to South Greensboro. The 3 bike loop detectors downtown. And then you can see this is Shelton Street here, Poplar Street connecting. This shows this little connection because what we may end up doing is focusing on this connection point. And then you can barely see it here, but this is that Maple Avenue project. And then in the southernmost portion, you can see the South Greensboro Street sidewalk, the 3 signalized pedestrian connections, Phase 1 of Morgan Creek. And again, this would connect kind of here to Chapel Hill. Phase 2, and then you can begin to see the high school here. I guess you can't quite see the lake over here, but it's all kind of coming together. So in terms of other things that are going on besides infrastructure, we continue to collaborate with our regional and local partners for TDM events. These are some of our signature items or events that we're particularly known for. And this is, I guess I shouldn't have abbreviated January. And then other programs and initiatives, our Silver Status Bicycle Friendlies community term is almost ready for renewal, so we'll be applying for that in June and hoping to get to gold. We have received the non-infrastructure grant for Safe Routes to School, which we're hoping to get underway with a request for proposals for some consulting services to update our plan, update the demographics, get another school or two added to that. You have adopted just recently the Vision Zero initiative, the Complete Streets. For Vision Zero, we're hoping to see the MPO have things in order so that they can begin the work related to the Safe Streets for All grant, which will be essentially a Vision Zero plan for the region. We have also submitted a grant for Road to Zero, which hopefully, if we get it, would provide consulting funds for consulting services to do some town-wide traffic counts that came up for the work session for traffic calming. Watch for Me sadly is paused, but we'll pick that back up when that becomes available. So other things that are important to mention, again, the Orange County Transit Plan. These are the projects that we have gotten funded. We also have, I think, about 5 projects that were included in the plan as unfunded priorities, including the 20% match for Morgan Creek Greenway Phase 2, if we're lucky enough to get that funded. And so this has been a really important source for us, and staff continues to meet as part of the staff working group, and Orange County is now undergoing a short-range transit plan. So we're really seeing transit activity from all 3 main groups in this area, Go Triangle, Chapel Hill Transit, and then Orange County really picking up their call on demand and regular service. And so just as a conclusion, for those folks looking, this is where you can always find this information. We're trying hard to keep this up to date. The storybook or the story map, which you can find from the landing page of the town website, where you can, and this is the buttons you push and you get the images with the little indicator locators, and then finally the project reports for the written updates. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Boy, I'm telling you, there's a lot going on with transportation projects, which is good. And thank you, Tina, for the presentation. Mayor Pro Tem now.
Thank you, Tina. Really classing the joint up. Love the presentation. I love the visualization of the networks. I can tell the care and thought that's going into the way that this is presented. It's getting better every time we see it. I am really grateful. And not least because if I don't die in Calvander, I'll die at the top of Old Pittsboro Road. So those 2 projects in particular, I appreciate getting an update on. South Greensboro. Is that 25, 26? So the way I read what we have in our packet is we have a planned 25, 26 resurfacing for the north part of North Greensboro, Hillsboro to Weaver. And then the south, basically the non-sidewalk parts, 25, 26.
Can I adjust that? So originally it was our understanding that the resurfacing would be for North Greensboro, and it would go from about the Century Center to Hillsboro. We started developing our restriping plan based on that. We have since been informed that that the interest of DOT is to do the resurfacing from roundabout to roundabout. So from the North Greensboro Estes roundabout to the South Greensboro roundabout.
You anticipated my question. So essentially what we're looking at, due to the sidewalk becoming part of the resurfacing, is 25, 26 for the sidewalk.
Well, I don't think that the sidewalk will delay the resurfacing. I think it's more that the resurfacing may be delayed by the sidewalk.
Okay. So further back than 25, 26 due to possible complications with the sidewalk?
I would hope not.
Me too. Okay. And then the second broader thing here, and this is where I understand the size of the ask, but I do think that the matrix that were provided in the packet essentially needs almost every next step needs a date or an obstacle to a date. And I would really like to see this particular matrix come back to us on consent with as much of that as you can do on whatever timeline it can be done. I know that when we work with DOT, they resist project timeline concreteness. It's standard operating procedure for many stakeholders. But I think that in order for this document to really be usable, next steps pretty much consistently, just to think of something like right-of-way and easement acquisition continuing for one of the Greenway projects. I think in order for this to be a meaningful update that is useful and actionable as we sort of plan for what we're going to be, prioritizing within the network, I fully defer on what kind of timeline you can provide, exactly what kind of information, but I do think that essentially we need to have that data field for pretty much every next step on the form. So I mean, with that in mind, for this particular update, I would have in mind like before the summer recess, if that were doable, and with the understanding that it may not always be a date, but a reason why there's not a date. Parliamentarily, if I need to move to add that to the resolution, would that be okay? So I will propose a friendly amendment to our acceptance resolution that we will get a data field added to the project tracker with staff's best estimate for date or obstacles to dates before the summer recess. Is that timeline, for what I understand is an onerous ask, doable?
I don't think the ask is onerous in terms of identifying a date. I think the challenge is keeping a date. And so that's the challenge, is do you throw out a date that you're not really confident that you can necessarily keep, or do you leave it a little bit vague? For example, for South Greensboro Street, those are a number of properties. And you just don't know until you begin to, we are required because it's federally funded, to identify what I'm not saying this right, to offer payment for an easement based on whether it's temporary or permanent or whatever. Some people are very comfortable with that. Other people aren't. Some folks will say, I don't need any payment. This is a great project. It's very difficult to predict those kind of things. We've been working with that engineering staff to try to get an updated schedule for a little bit of time, and they've been waiting for the water line information to see if any of the easements will need to be adjusted. So there's a couple of things like that that just make it difficult to predict.
But before I relinquish, I do want to offer, in case it's helpful, that I think I would be very amenable to even a fairly broad range of timelines rather than dates. As benchmark compared to relative to similar projects, this might be 6 to 24 months. Really not looking to pin you to something that creates additional pressure but do want to get a sense of concreteness and proportion at relative in relative terms. So thank you very much, Tina. And I do move to add that friendly amendment to get that update in this project tracker.
Motion.
So you move it with the amendment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'll second.
I was going to say,
Or
I
mo-
don't
or-
think it's a friendly amendment because you're moving
You're
the
moving
thing in the
the
first
thing with
place,
the
so you
amendment.
can put it in your motion.
Oh, okay.
That's what I was asking.
Remarkable. I'll do that.
You're moving it with the amendment.
And I know that there's a lot of other discussion. And thank you, Tina.
Thank you. Member Posada.
Tina, thank you so much. This is very comprehensive. Thank you for that. I will say that I do support having some kind of range of time just so that we have an idea. It doesn't, like, I understand that there's a lot of moving parts. I'm not going to come back if you say it'll be done in 12 months. I'm like, Dana, why isn't, we're not going to do that. But we do want to make sure that we have something because we do get questions like, what are we expecting here? Is it a year? Is it 2 years? Is it 3? And on that note, the NC 54 crossing, right?
Near where you live.
Yes. So you said that the bid would start in September. I'm trying to think realistically, or as close as realistically as you can. When would we expect some of that projects to actually start? Because like just the other day, I almost ran someone over who was like running across the street. So like I'm very much interested in getting that done as soon as possible. But I also understand it's not in our hands. But I'm wondering what would be kind of like a timeline that we would be thinking of there.
We were under the impression that the construction would begin this summer. I have since seen an updated report from DOT. They provide project updates at the MPO meetings, for those of you that want to follow that. And they indicated that they would now be doing the advertisements in September. So I would hope in the fall of 2024.
Yeah, I didn't know what the turnaround of that kind of advertising, getting that project done usually is.
Yeah, I mean, you would expect that the bid process would take, a month plus, and then they would go into an agreement process. So, but, to the question about scheduling, certainly there's a construction period, and so timing can be really important with these projects. For example, projects that the town is managing, going through an advertisement process, having a selected contractor, going through concurrence with DOT, getting that item before the council before the summer break so that construction can begin over the summer is a really critical window. And if you miss that, you've got a little bit of a delay. So there's a lot of timing involved in terms of seeing these things go as quickly as they can versus sometimes that it might end up taking a little bit longer.
No, thank you for that, and that gives me a little bit more of a clear picture. So, I don't believe Mayor Pro Tem you got a second to your motion, but with that, I'll second your motion.
You had some. Go ahead.
I guess I have a short question for Danny and Elliot. Because Danny, when you're looking for a time, what I understand is you're like, hey, what is our current best guess? Not, as Eleazar said, because you're trying to hold to it, but because you're trying to understand the sequencing of things and have a sense of when we're coming up on it so that, for instance, we might start communicating about that with folks so that we can provide updates who are asking about it and so on.
Yeah.
This is like a current best guess, understanding that there is no ability to stick that date to a calendar.
That's a moving
Yeah,
target.
absolutely. I mean, any number of reasons, our retreat with the priorities, was why I was asking about the RFF, because that'll, we were pretty interested in prioritizing the Greenway as part of multimodal connectivity. After the RFF gives clarity or doesn't, then having timelines for, what the next design phase with that project, just to pick one for instance, would be, would allow us to see whether it's responsible to keep prioritizing it this year, or if the, if the design phase is going to be an 18 to 24 month timeline regardless, maybe it's most prudent to prioritize something with a shorter timeline. I mean, all kinds of relative reasons to have that information.
And then I think I would also like to see that data point, just because in my experience working with projects, sometimes how much and how often a project moves is also sort of an implicit data point, just to us better understand and therefore better communicate sort of what's in flight and what folks should reasonably expect, what expectations maybe aren't supported.
In your hood. Yep. That's wonderful.
I had a question regarding the side path to Anderson. So, seems like we kind of went through that rather quickly. What is the status of that, and what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, so as part of, I can't remember if it was P5 or P6, but it was our understanding that that project had been funded. And part of what happened with P6 is that, when DOT paused that process to handle some funding issues, and then they realized that perhaps they had overcommitted. And so it was a process of them going to all the different partners, all the different municipalities, asking for updated estimates on costs for projects, et cetera. Part of the reason for doing the express design is for DOT to get a more realistic estimate of costs. So the project at this point has only made it in prioritization for design. And so it is not considered a fully programmed project, and it will be reprioritized.
And will that come through in this cycle?
It will come through so we didn't lose a slot, so to speak. It was automatically reprioritized.
Right. Yeah. And thank you for the work on this. It was great to read through. And the slide presentation was even better.
That it? Motion's on the floor. It has a second. Ready for the question? Calling the question. Do we need the motion restated? Everybody understands.
The motion is
With
to
the
adopt the resolution in the packet accepting this update with the amendment that we would like to see time updates on each of the next steps in the matrix view that we were provided in the packet before the summer recess latest.
Mm-hmm. That is the motion. It has a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Matters by the board. Motion to adjourn.
Sorry,
Apologies. Back to matters by the board.
One quick update.
You're fine.
You went very fast.
You're okay.
One update, I will be traveling for work. I have just learned next
Saw your email.
week, Sunday through Wednesday, so I will be remote for our work session next week.
And there is one other thing about the work session, the setup. Are we okay with this setup, or are we preferring the setup that we've had with the tables here?
I like the dais. It's comfy. I mean, it's as comfy as the other setup and less trouble for folks to set up. If I need to ask Danny to lean back so I can see everybody, I can just do that. It works out.
Less expensive.
Good.
Done.
Everybody okay with that?
Move it now.
There it is. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We are.